Lovely. Well, thank you very much. My name is Christopher Vandome. I'm a Senior Research Fellow with the Africa Programme at Chatham House. We work predominantly on political economy and natural resource governance, peace and security issues across the continent. I'm going to flag this now. I've just been asked to lead an initiative on global critical minerals governance, so more than happy to talk to you about what I know about that so far. And I'm also doing a PhD at the University of Witwatersrand on mining investment, so very happy to be chairing a panel on jurisdictions that I've worked in and on for a number of years, and really excited to talk about it's essentially four questions, really. One is that, there is a global politicization of supply chains, and international governments are putting increasing expectations on the mining industry. And I think what we're here to learn is what are the expectations of African governments? What is it that African governments would like to do to better get value capture from their resource endowments? And how would they like to position themselves geopolitically to better capture those resource endowments? So I've got some questions that, as with all of the chairs, the questions have been shared in advance, so they're not so much of a surprise. But perhaps we'll start with you, Excellency Macenje Mazoka, the High Commissioner from Zambia. In addition to the regional partnerships and cooperation agreements that have been set internationally, Zambia has an international mining-focused partnership with China, with India, with the UAE, the USA, Japan, the EU, and the UK. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell us from the Zambian experience of how African countries are working to attract global investors from these different jurisdictions and positioning themselves for critical minerals and metals? So, Excellency, thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, we play in all sandboxes. So for us, I think the key learning, if you will, is ensuring that we've changed our policies to ensure that investment in the mining sector is more fluid. We've worked on issues of transparency as well, reconstituted our mining cadastre so that there is transparency around processes, around the acquisition of licenses, to really ensure that there's confidence that's built in the various investment sectors. We've had varying relationships with the different countries over the years. And we found that some relationships have been more challenging than others, just in terms of how you negotiate, the balance of negotiation, the benefits of negotiation. Obviously, it's much more attractive and palatable from a country perspective when there's more fairness, in terms of how we balance out our resources and the development on the ground, particularly from a value addition standpoint. So in terms of what we're doing to be more attractive to a wide variety of investors to come into the country, again, policy reform. We're looking at geo-mapping our country because we honestly don't know what is in a huge sector, section of our country, particularly the Western Province and some other provinces. So in order to have a good offering on the table, you need to know what is on the table. So part of that is to get a sense of what are the wide variety of minerals that we have, critical rare earth as well, to really be able to put a good meal on the table for someone who wants to come and join. We're looking at partnership opportunities as well, and of course ensuring that there is much more manufacturing on the ground. That's one of the ways that we really want to push and develop the sector even further. I think the model of having raw materials going out of our countries is, I think it's overplayed, if you could use that loose term. And I think you'll find a lot of our countries feel the same way, particularly, in our region and most likely beyond. We have corridors that are being refurbished and some that are being established. namely the Lobito Corridor as one, funded by the West, if you will. And then to the right, we have the renovation of Tazara being refurbished by our Chinese partners. So the idea is that with the advent and the polishing up of these corridors, that there are opportunity for more businesses to mushroom along those corridor tracks. So it's not just the extraction model anymore.
Thank you very much. And the High Commissioner is a very seasoned diplomat, so she's not going to tell us when she talks about the easier partners and the more difficult partners who those are, but you can maybe catch her afterwards and ask. But on that, the kind of the broad spectrum of opportunities, you talk about the geomapping, and I know that the geomapping that has taken place in Zambia has involved companies from multiple different countries. So even there's opportunities for service providers from different parts of the globe, and that's a really kind of important story in Zambia. As I mentioned, the High Commissioner from Botswana unfortunately isn't going to be able to join us because he has been called into another meeting. So I think the panel can think about his question, which was going to be on the lessons for maintaining a positive investment climate. But before we come to our ministers, Oliver, from your side, as the UK government prepares its new Africa approach, which it's been doing consultations around over the last few months, and there's a forthcoming new critical minerals strategy. Where do critical minerals fit into the UK's strategic priorities on the continent? And what have been the achievements so far for developing new and resilient supply chains?
Small question. And, I mean, it's a season for strategies in UK government, right? So you see this week we've launched our new industrial strategy. That's a bold statement from our government for the next period in governments. It says we want to step up to the challenge. We want to drive more investment into the UK. We want to get our manufacturing sectors going. We want to provide jobs, good high quality jobs and research and innovation and all those good things. So that's, on one hand, is what we're trying to achieve domestically. If you look internationally, we then have the Africa approach, and Chris, you mentioned the new approach to Africa consultation we've just done on that. You probably know a lot more about the history of UK-Africa relations than me, but one thing I can say from having lived and worked there a bit is that nothing ever seems to stay the same. So it's right that we are looking at how we engage with Africa and how we collaborate together. And front and center of the responses from that consultation is this message that Africa wants to work on the basis of mutual respect, on the basis of win-win partnerships, quite rightly, with partners like the UK. And so we talk about the value chain and where Africa can contribute more in global value chains. That's the right question to ask. And then, but I think in terms of mining, we all know this is a long play. It will certainly outlast governments. You know, what's going on in terms of investment, the processes to get mines and new supply chains up and running. So it's got to work for everyone, right? The contract, the arrangement that we come to has to work for everyone. So for us, it's really about collaboration. And we have this fantastic heritage in the UK of a mining history. You see some of the names on the screen there that have a history in the UK and others. And so there's a lot to offer in terms of those companies being able to invest and collaborate with their partners overseas. You can go all the way from the start, I think, of the mining life cycle, from the mapping, from the British Geological Survey and the work they do with partners across the continent, through to the companies that help to design and plan mines and get those necessary due diligence steps done to get the mines off the ground, through to the investors, the finance that's available in London, and many other things that you could add along the way. So it's not so much to promote, you know, isn't the UK great, but it's to think actually we've got things that we can offer to the partnership here, and Africa has things on the other side that it can offer. And how can we come together to respond to the challenges that we face in global supply chains. And I think sometimes everything I just said is a bit macro, right, and general, but I think sometimes you talked about successes. You have to get to the specific projects, the specific metals, the specific minerals, and say, okay, guys, we're in the business, let's talk about UK, of building an auto supply chain for electric vehicles. We need these battery metals to help make that happen. And actually, we could site those assets, those facilities in different locations. Of course, the mine has to be where the mine has to be, but the processing facilities along the way, the end manufacturing could take place in all sorts of different places. Let's have a conversation, let's bring the businesses, let's bring the investors around the table. Let's figure out how we can do this together, because ultimately, despite all the resource nationalisation that's out there, no one country is going to be able to hold all the cards on this game, so we have to work together. So, there you go.
Oliver, thank you. And you've got the bios with you, and you will see that Oliver has served in a diplomatic posting in Southern Africa, so he definitely knows more about UK and Africa than I do. But what I would say is that there was, as part of that approach, a consultation with the British Secretary of State, David Lammy, earlier this year with all of the African High Commissioners and ambassadors, which was the first time that had happened, that a Secretary of State in the UK listened to what the diplomatic corps said. And I think that at the moment there is that a similar thing happening throughout government of listening. We are in a new phase of UK-Africa relations where there is a desire to listen. What is it that African leaders want, and where can other countries support? And that Honourable Minister Chitando brings me on to the question for you, really, which is, again, what is it you want? But really, to mirror what was being asked of the High Commissioner, Zimbabwe has also developed a series of mineral partnerships. You've got partnerships with Russia, we've got China, India, Saudi Arabia, and not least around lithium fever. Spent a lot of time in Joburg. I can't get traders to stop talking to me about Zimbabwe and lithium. And it's become the go-to case for kind of new opportunities out there. So you are very blessed in that respect. But how is the changing geopolitical environment impacting Zimbabwe? And what are the lessons from Zimbabwe for other African countries on how to navigate this political environment?
Well, thank you very much. I think one of the cornerstones of our foreign policy is that Zimbabwe is a friend to all and an enemy to none. So yes, we do have the geopolitics, international geopolitics, but as far as our mineral policy is concerned, we would like to ensure that we concentrate on the exploration of the minerals. We would want to ensure we have maximum extraction of the minerals, and would want to have maximum value addition of the minerals. That's really what we focus on, and of course in partnership with the various investors from all corners of the world.
And I'll ask the question that I put to the panel earlier. What are the lessons for maintaining a positive investment climate? Over the 10 years that I've been working on Zimbabwe, it has a very well-known history, and it has been through this cycle, and it has been through moments of very positive engagement internationally, and it's been through moments of heavy criticism. But the industry is still there. And what's your message on that, that sense of continuity and a desire for people to engage long-term with the country?
Well, what is critical, mining is a long-term game. And investors want to ensure that there is policy clarity and policy consistency, so that when they invest their money, they are certain. When you put in your plans and you do your internal rate of returns, that you achieve what you are set to achieve. So what we are assured of in Zimbabwe is we do have a very solid piece of mining legislation in the form of the Mines and Minerals Act, and it is critical for any mining jurisdiction to have a competent and solid piece of legislation, which is what we have in Zimbabwe. We also, it is very clear, like I have said, that there is policy clarity, there is policy consistency, which is what we do have. And I stated earlier on, that there are fiscal issues which in all countries change or are reconsidered on a yearly basis when the annual budgeting process is done. And that is taken care of in terms of our mining investments, like I said earlier on, through the special mining list, whereby for a 25-year window, you agree upfront on the issues surrounding that investment, so that at least you are assured that for a period of 25 years, you've outlaid this, and this is what is the game plan. So it is important in terms for any jurisdiction to have solid piece of legislation and policy clarity and consistency.
Thank you. And on the subject of legislation, Minister Phumzile Mgcina, you spoke about the changes that are going on in your country, and you've got the MPRDA is out for public consultation, and you also have a new critical minerals and metals strategy. So with these policy developments in mind, what can governments do to strategically capitalize on global demand for critical minerals? And perhaps to follow on from Minister Chitando, what are the lessons around policy clarity and certainty? Because there are some in this room who may suggest that the MPRDA has not been is not a progressive move forward, but there are others that would say it is. So what's your thought on that, please?
Thank you very much. I think when we speak about our policies, one of the things that we did as government is to review our policies so that we can attract investors, because we've noted that most of the time people are leaving our country because of our policies. So now, because we want to attract investors, we must also align our policies so that it can be easy for them to come and invest. Secondly, we've adopted minerals strategy that we've just presented with number of minerals that are there of which are critical, and we know very well that as the world is changing, is transforming, those minerals are critical for some other countries. So we are saying we want more investors to come, but we can't say they must come yet. We have challenges with our policies. Hence, we will hear that we keep on reviewing them as government so that it can be conducive for them to come and invest in South Africa.
Thank you. And we've got plenty of time, so I'm going to keep going with these questions. Look, all of this comes around to really, I think, the point that was brought up at the beginning, which was a desire for value capture. And this is a conversation I had with some representatives from various countries, but including around, we've just seen in DRC that they've extended export restrictions on cobalt. Now that's largely around low pricing and challenges that they're seeing with low pricing. And there's a disconnect between how African governments' actions, between what their intention is and how they're interpreted overseas. And I think part of that is communicating this idea of how do we best capture value. And so perhaps start with the ministers, but then also the High Commissioner, and then on to you, Oliver, around this question of how to best communicate a desire for value capture. Are we seeing, is it being done appropriately at the moment? And is there a space for things like export controls, which again has been something that Zimbabwe has pursued and which has received international criticism, but is understandable in terms of desire for that value capture? And do you see a way, is this a case of you guys have to understand what we want and we can move forward and beyond? So perhaps, Minister, if you'd like to go first with that one.
Well, I think first and foremost, it is for Africa to develop. Africa has to value add its minerals. Africa will not develop by exporting minerals in their raw format. Because by exporting minerals in their raw form, you are exporting jobs, you are exporting value. So for Africa to develop, there has to be value addition in the respective countries and also collaboration among its African countries. so that we maximize value before export. Having said this, it is also then important that in doing so, we engage and work with the respective industry players, so that at the end of the day, there has to be, it has to commercially make sense to, to government and also to the industry players. And like I said, in the case of Zimbabwe, I gave an example of the value addition in the platinum sector, whereby they actually engaged a consultant to come and look at the practicality of, undertaking value addition, which proved positive, and we are following that route. And I also made an example on the lithium side, to say the lithium, for the lithium players, it makes commercial sense for them to value add, and hence they are investing in that. But having said that, what is also then important that once you now have the value addition facilities, like specifically for the respective countries, you can then say those who are adding value, add value, you export. Those who are not adding value, you say, oh, well, you can export, without adding value. There is need for that collaboration, so that at least the respective African countries, they maximize value from the resources they do have.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Minister Mgcina, would you
Yes.
agree?
Yes, I fully agree with my colleague here that for us, when we say we want investors to come, we must also note that we are emphasizing on the value add, because we can't just export just raw material. We want to emphasize on the issue of value add, because adding value to our mineral resources, it's also creating job opportunities for our people in our country. We're also benefiting from those mineral resources. For the longest time, we've been exporting our mineral resources without adding any value. But now we are saying, let us add value to our mineral resources so that we can export them with value added, but also create job opportunities for our people. We're also having a system whereby it's cadastral system that we have in our department, in our government, that will assist to fast-track the applications of licenses and rights for mining, and also to assist to map the, it has a geological mapping. It also assists to identify the area where we can mine. So the issue of exploration, it goes a long way. But what we are saying, as much as we are inviting investors to come, but we must also be in our mind that we must invest by building infrastructure, but also add value to those mineral resources.
High Commissioner, would you agree?
Yes, well, I certainly do agree. And I mean, my question would be is, why the pushback? I mean, I understand why the pushback, but why the pushback in this day and age when there are global cuts in terms of aid and development, going across the continent and other developing nations? We're being impacted severely with the geopolitics that's happening. So why the pushback in terms of working with our countries to ensure that we do get more value from our own resources? We have the fastest growing population, the largest youth population globally as well. People need jobs, people need jobs. And so hence I think the approach of the partnership approach is probably more in line with where we would want to go, because we also have to grow our economies. We want to grow our economies. We need to grow our economies because we have a lot more young people than most places across the world. So we have young, energetic people who are willing to work, who want to work, and should enjoy the value of the resources that are in their own communities. So in the West, there are issues of migration and so forth. Oftentimes, you have issues of migration because people are leaving their homes because they can't find jobs, or whether it's political unrest. So all of that investment, in developing countries, be it Africa or other parts of the world, would add value to the world globally. So I think also in terms of the pushback, sometimes companies, and we understand about the bottom line and people have to make money. But if you look at it from I think from a broader perspective, if we look at it, we have to be a little bit more conscious of the impact of the balance sheets in 10, 15, 20 years. Are we really capacitating our communities in the way that we need to, or are they going to end up coming back in small boats to knock on doors in order to get jobs? So I think there's a larger picture that we also need to keep in mind.
I'll give you your time back, but I want to check in with the audience, because this is the conversation where the politicians say, of course we must do value add. And I'm not sure the audience is as convinced, because it must make sense, and it's their balance sheet. So why don't we check in with the audience? I'm not influencing you, but take your little tool of mass democracy, the QR code. We believe in democracy, don't we? Okay, you don't have to answer. Take your tool of mass democracy, click on the link. I want to put you a question, and it's a simple question. I hope it makes sense. African countries should impose value-adding requirements on mining companies. Yes or no? So African countries should impose value-adding requirements on miners. I'm deliberately vague. I don't say beneficiation. I'm just broadly challenging the audience. Should African countries impose value-adding requirements on miners? Yes or no? Okay, the 15 of the politicians have voted. I'm just voting for the...
Yeah, we are winning.
Come on, I'm not closing this vote until most of you have voted. We've got more people online than what have voted so far. The reason I'm keeping it open is I obviously totally disagree with this vote, you know. So I'm hoping that if I keep it open, and Phumzile is going to go back and
Now you're influencing the
I'm
vote.
doing my
You
best.
said that and it had the no.
No, Phumzile is going to go back and tell Gwede, you know that guy who says you cannot bully mining companies into beneficiation, you can do that. So he's going to go and tell my minister, so I'm in trouble now. I'm surprised. But the purpose of checking in is just to test this audience right now. This audience seems to find some alignment with African countries should impose value-adding requirements on miners. I would not have... you've got the wrong screen on now. Can the screen person wake up? You've switched to the other screen. Okay. But I think, sorry, I don't know why we've gone off the poll screen. And we're still off the poll screen. So I think we saw where it was going. Somewhere between 75 and 85% of this audience says, you guys are legitimately screwing us over, or something like that. I don't know what that
No.
Back to, sorry, I just wanted to check in with the audience. Please carry on.
Well, I won't ask, are you guys legitimately screwing them over? That's too much.
No.
Or
Not so good in your Chinese accent, though.
Or Chris, maybe some of the companies or whoever responded are creating stronger value-based companies. See? Because at some point, as a global community, we have to really look at issues of equity and fairness. As it is, even if you look at our mining belts, okay? We're in Zambia, you go at the top, you have Solwezi, you have Kolwezi on the other side. Those were not our borders. We didn't create those borders, so the streams flow, you know, what do they call them in terms of mining? The belts, you know, go from one country to another. So I think that speaks to also what the minister was saying in terms of we need to work closer together, you know, as African countries, even as the African Union. There is a critical mineral strategy that's there, so large entities could look at how we have discussed some of these issues on a from a continental perspective. Of course, we have continental perspective and then our own country goals and objectives. But I think that possibly companies are looking at a new way of doing business, on the continent, which I think would be welcomed, certainly.
And I would agree. I think that there is a new appreciation of how to do business and a greater appreciation of this this value capture. And to perhaps Englishify your question and change it, but into a, there are people in this room with budgets, and there are people from UK and other national governments who have still got some development spend and so on. But the idea of beneficiation and processing is complicated. It's very difficult to, in certain or many minerals, it's very difficult to make that profitable. And so it can sometimes confuse people when there's this saying of, oh, well, we want to have processing and beneficiation, and people on the outside are saying, well, that's the bit that we're struggling to make money in, so why do you want it? And people have got very limited budgets, whether it be from the companies or whether it be from government. So in the broader spectrum, if you wanted someone to say, where do you want this crowd to put their money? Do you want them to put it into infrastructure and energy generation? You say, you do that bit and we'll do the rest. Do you want them to put it directly into processing? Do you want to get better value capture from what's existing going on? Where is the one priority in all of this that in Zimbabwe and South Africa you would want people to direct their money? And then we'll ask Oliver where he's going to spend it when the UK has its strategy. Minister Chitando, please.
Well, I think I get back to what I said earlier on. You want to maximize on the exploration. You want to maximize on the extraction. You want to maximize on the value addition. Now, it doesn't have to be one investor doing all of that. You have those who are good at exploration. They do the exploration. They bring certain projects to a certain level. Then the bigger entities, they come in. The project site, bankable feasibility study, they've been de-risked. Then it's much easier to attract capital to fund those projects and bring them into production. Now, once you've done that, it's now a question of making sure that you do have the ecosystem around the extraction, which is commercially viable. The ecosystem for someone to come in and put in a solar plant at this remote siting, it has to be, the economics have to make sense. Then someone will come in and put a solar plant for the generation of the electricity. Once you have a certain volume and value, and it makes commercial sense to then value add the given mineral to the next phase. If the company who is invested in extraction does not have the technical and financial capacity to do that, so many players will come and do it because it's an ecosystem. The extraction will feed into value addition. There will be so many players willing to do that. In some cases, you do find that you have investors who would like to be involved all the way. They would want to be involved in that ecosystem as far as providing constructing the railway line in terms of, providing the electricity, in terms of, the value addition. Some entities would want to, to be in charge of that whole value chain and the provision of the necessary infrastructure and services. But at the same time, if the investor does not have the appetite or financial and technical capacity, you then find that extraction, if it is at a sufficient scale, it's so easy to get the service providers to come and invest to provide the services. It's so easy to then have those other entities come in and participate in the value addition. The most important thing, it has to be commercially viable. So the main issue is you would want to maximize your exploration. You also then want, having done the exploration, to maximize on the extraction so that the extraction gives sufficient volumes to be able to make sure that the ecosystem around that extraction makes it commercially viable for a number of those things to be done, to happen.
Yeah.
No, I think I fully agree with Minister here, but also we must note that critical minerals are not the same. So some minerals they need infrastructure, smelters, etc. Some they want to add value. Some it's exploration. So we can't say we want only infrastructure. I think the critical minerals and metals are broad. So when you come, what we are saying, we say we want to see beneficiation in different ways. We are not saying we just want infrastructure only, but we want a beneficiation in terms of reskilling, in terms of value adding. When we export the minerals, must have value. So we can't say we just want this. We want investors to put their money on this infrastructure, but we want them to be to think out loud when it comes to critical minerals, not just to focusing on one mineral, because I know since we've published them, it's not only one minerals, but a number of minerals there that we believe investors are interested on them. So we are saying that they must come and invest, then we'll see how are they benefiting the society through beneficiation.
Oliver, I hope you've got deep pockets because they can't name one thing that they want. So looks like the expectation is for everything. But what can you tell us about what to expect from the strategy of where the UK can support?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that could be said about this. I mean, I think first up, the ambition, right, is absolutely the right thing from an African standpoint. The question is how you do it. And to take us right the way back to the export control story, we've all seen what happens when certain countries impose export controls on markets. And the problem with that, of course, is that it scares the investors, right? And it makes it very hard to invest in those supply chains. So for me, at least, it has to be a genuine partnership conversation where you bring the investors around the table, you build their trust, and you figure out how everyone can get something out of this deal that we're talking about. And we have to remember, and there are many more experts in the room than me on this, as fund managers and investors and so on, but the big problem with mining is equity, right? At the junior stage, you cannot get enough money into these projects to start with because they are high risk, right? So you have to find a way of de-risking those projects, whether it's through government support, whether it's through, I'm loath to suggest that government should throw equity at these projects because often we do it very badly. The trick, I think, the preference is to find a regulatory framework and a market for these metals that actually encourages the private investment to happen. I mean, practically then on the development finance side, and this is sort of straying out of my lane a little bit because there are other experts in our government that work on this, but I think there are all sorts of really great things that we're trying to do, which there's a program called Growth Gateway, for example, which looks has done a quite interesting study that I read recently on Tanzania. It looks at, okay, you've got these kind of minerals in the ground. What kind of infrastructure do you need in terms of energy, transport, etc., to actually make these projects more commercially attractive? All the way through to sort of more commercial partnerships. So something like the Mineral Security Partnership. It's an interesting organization. It's a group of in a way, it is a bit of a buyers club, right? It's a group of consumer nations, but also a group of producer nations coming together and saying, how can we jointly get some of these projects off the ground and bring some investment into it, figure out what we need to do to make those projects more attractive and to help make them happen. On that front, there's a project in Angola which is looking at rare earths. Again, not picking on any of the countries represented here, but it is an interesting example because they're both doing the mining and some of the processing there. And they're a kind of UK headquartered organisation that's raised money from Japan and other places to help make this happen. And you see in those kind of projects how you could actually make a reality of some of these kind of grand talk about getting investment in. You've got to get the right trust, you've got to get the right regulation around it, you've got to get the right investors to come in and take part in the conversation, and the right off-takers, the people who actually want to buy this stuff at the end of the day to make all of that happen.
And the MSP has been very clear to say that it's not a buyers club, which might suggest that it might be a buyers club. But
It is. I mean, I think it's a way of I mean, I think MSP is still trying to understand what it is actually.
Yeah.
It's a very new organisation, but it is a recognition that something needs to be done to get the investment into these projects. Something needs to be done to get the framework around them correct, and that no one country can do this by themselves. Certainly not at scale.
Mm. Oh, right. And they've been very active at things on the continent and putting the message out there, although I think it's unclear with the Trump presidency. I'm going to put a final question to the ministers and the High Commissioner. But you'll have 2 minutes to think about this. Does it matter? Back to the high level, this is about critical minerals and the geopolitics of that, which is largely guided by international governments who have said, we consider this to be critical because of vulnerabilities in the supply chain and the economic importance for our own economies, which has then been followed by a series of critical mineral strategies from producer countries to say, actually, this is what we see as critical because of the potential for value capture for us as producers. The question for you to think about quickly is, does this label of criticality matter, or is it for you more about saying, no, our mining sector as a whole matters? And Oliver, a question for you is, how does, I want to follow up on this idea of opportunities for UK beyond the equity bit that you spoke about, doing lots in geomapping, the role of the schools of mines and skills improvement, support in infrastructure, all of that bit as well. Is there some of that we can expect from the critical minerals strategy?
Do you want me to take that one?
If you start, and then we'll go to High Commission, and we'll end with the ministers to have their final say.
Yeah, so I mean, international-wise, the strategy is, I mean, we talked about the finance and what the UK can offer in terms of capital markets, which I think is a particular strength. But then I think there's a whole range of things that we can do with partners. At the base of it, there has to be a kind of commercial logic to some of these relationships. We want to collaborate on a supply chain to support wind turbines or electric vehicles or our defence and aerospace sectors. The stuff in the ground is located here. These are the people with the skills and technology to produce it. Bring that all together, these are the investors. What can we do as government to support that? It's about striking trade arrangements or more fluid and flexible agreements on critical minerals, which we've got with a number of the countries here, and how we can actually move those from talk into practical delivery of some of these projects. It's about how we can support on the kind of capacity building and development side. So we talked about the Growth Gateway project. There's also a project called Manufacturing Africa, which looks very exactly this issue actually. How can African nations capture more of the value in battery supply chains, for example? And so that stuff is out there. And then I think there's a whole range of companies here who do really interesting stuff on a sort of consultancy advisory basis. They're on the lookout, right, for projects that they can work on, and we want to bring those into the conversation as well. So, there's no end of ways we can structure these partnerships. Really about what the partner government needs, what we need. Where's the kind of sweet spot in that Venn diagram where everyone's happy, and we can press on with it. And there's no point having these big strategic conversations, which we all like to do on critical minerals and admire the problem. We've got to move to identifying the solutions, putting our resources behind making them happen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Commissioner, does criticality matter?
Yes, I think criticality does matter. I guess how you define what's critical is the question. There's what's critical to the global community in terms of needs for whether it's the energy transition, whether it is the needs for AI and these new technologies that are happening. So in that sense, we have global critical needs, if you will, which then become extremely valuable to those of us who do have those minerals, because then it becomes critical to the growth of our countries and the development of our countries and our economies. So I think both sides of the criticalness story are of value. What's of critical use for the world and vis-a-vis what's critical for our own country and our own developments, and in terms of what we may want to use them for locally, if you will. But at the end of the day, it's really about creating jobs for our people. It's about growing our economy. using the resources that we do have as effectively as possible. And I think that one of the I think biggest opportunities is this new tech transition, and of course the green economy and the whole energy transition. So being a part of those conversations and being a player at the table is where we need to be. Because as they say, nothing without us. And for those who are interested in having a conversation around Zambia, this is a very shameless plug. We are having an investment conference from the 16th to the 18th of July that is being opened up by the president, and then all of the key ministries are going to be there, mining in terms of how to invest in Zambia. So I encourage all of you who are interested to join us. Thank you.
And that will be in Lusaka.
Yes, it'll be in Lusaka, indeed. By the
We can get your
ZBA.
invitations.
Yes.
Ms. Mgcina, does it help? Labeling some things as critical and some things not. Does it help?
Well, what I can say, all minerals are critical, depending on the global demand. That these are critical this time because are needed more globally. But everything that we are mining is critical because you'll find that some of the minerals that we have, we might not use them as a country, but there are countries that they need or they are depending on them. Hence, I'm saying everything that we are mining is critical, but depends on the on the demand on the markets that which one is needed or is one of the mineral that is attracting investors by that time. So we can't say some of the things that we are mining are no longer critical. For example, in South Africa, coal remains one of our critical minerals because it assists us as the country in terms of energy. Maybe some of the countries it's not critical for them, but it is critical for us. Hence, I'm saying anything that we are mining in our country, it is critical, but depends on the markets and the demand and the global.
And coal is very critical for the National Union of Mine Workers. Minister Chitando.
Well, I wouldn't agree with anymore with what my colleague just said. All minerals are critical to Zimbabwe. Coal is very critical to Zimbabwe because we need coal to expand our energy base.
Yes.
So the definition to then say, we should look at critical minerals and come up with different policies or principles, I do not necessarily agree with. It comes back to what I said. We look at exploration, extraction, value, and marketing. We would want each and every mineral which we have as a country to be explored, extracted, and value-added sufficiently to bring value to Zimbabwe.
Panel, thank you very much. And we'll hand back over. And I think Oliver's praying that you don't ask the audience, should the UK list coal as a critical mineral?
Yeah, we can ask the audience, do you think the UK is ever going to spend any money on Africa? But let's talk about collaboration because the money seems to come from China at the moment. So you quoted for both the High Commissioner and Minister the bilaterals that your countries have. You didn't do that for South Africa. These bilaterals sounded like an African country with non-African countries. So, High Commissioner, do you have any bilaterals with a fellow South African, Southern African or African company? Do you have bilaterals with Zimbabwe and South Africa, just for information?
Yes, we do have bilaterals with our countries.
So it was just his listing was a bit Eurocentric.
Yes.
I mean,
we have bilaterals on a wide variety of sectors.
and Minister Winston, do you have bilaterals with your fellow African colleagues?
Yes, firstly, we have the AU.
But that's like, no, just quoting United Nations now.
At a broad level.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the AU sets the policy for the African Union. And then also following from that policy framework, then the various countries develop their bilaterals.
And there was the African vision, or what was the mining vision that the AU developed some time ago?
Yes.
But do you have actual implementable agreements with South Africa on battery minerals or something like that?
No. We do have, you find that the battery minerals, or what you call the new energy minerals, those are some way we are finding through the bilateral meetings, we are coming up with, engaging with the various, SADC countries to ensure that we come up with collaboration to maximize the.
I'll come back to you now, Commissioner. You look like you want to say more. I just want to check it. Oh, sorry. Look, I misread your body language. Deputy Minister, South Africa got bilaterals with other African neighbors.
Yes, we do. And when we sit, we discuss different minerals that we have, that we don't have and they have, because South Africa is one of the, within the Africa, South Africa is a gateway country whereby we can work around critical minerals. For example, we can have smelters in South Africa. In terms of transport, railways, ports, we can use South Africa. So we do have bilaterals with our country, with our neighbor countries in the continent.
There are so many questions here around, but this all requires energy. And then the South African energy question specifically, but can I put it to all three of you again? If you want to capture more value, it often requires energy, electricity. Have your country got spare electricity for your smelters? No, you don't. So let's go to let's go to the next minister. Zimbabwe has abundance of electricity.
Okay. No, you find that we have had to revisit our energy plants because, we were, in terms of our electricity generation capacity, half was in hydro and half in coal. And with the recent drought over the last 2 years, you then find that the hydro generation, and also we do have very close cooperation with Zambia on the hydro side, but we're only generating in some cases less than 20% of the capacity. So that then created a shortfall, and because of that lesson, we then are increasing our electricity generation from coal. So we have at the moment, there was commissioning of 2 new units in Hwange, coal-fired electricity generation units, and we have other, coal-powered electricity plants which are being.
Deputy Minister, I want to come back to you. There's a lot of work going into the national grid, and you want to comment? So, will South Africa have the power for this policy that you are putting forward?
Since I've indicated earlier on that we had a number of smelters and were shut down because of electricity. So now we are coming back as government, working together with the private sector to assist us to deal with the challenge of energy, because previously it was us as government, but now we are coming with the approach of working with private sector to overcome this challenge of energy.
Hi, Commissioner. Have you got the power for the plans?
Do we have the power for the plants? Well, I think similar to the honorable ministers and deputy minister, we have had a tough time, particularly because of the drought. We were doing very well from a green energy standpoint. We thought, okay, because we are 85, almost 90% hydro, and then comes a drought, and so we were very exposed. As a result of that, the country has been aggressively pursuing more alternative energy sources, so looking more at solar. There's a call for solar explosion, a relook at how we buy back energy, and there are incentives for companies of various sizes. If they produce energy for their own purposes, they can sell back their excess to the grid. That process was accelerated recently by the president because we have key deliverables before the end of this year to be able to do such. So it is a work in progress on a fast train.
And I suppose this takes us to, you all spoke about the ecosystem. The ecosystem also is not only corridors, but also electricity, power, supply, and I think collaboration between the countries in that area. This was always going to be a very interesting conversation because our need is to not have a mining conference in the absence of policymakers. We don't want to talk about you, we want to talk to you. We are struggling in South Africa with that concept. We go into our little rooms and then we publish new policy documents and then we start talking to each other. But I think we achieved a lot, and I thank you, thank you for your contribution. This audience is positive towards we must capture more value and the benefit. But I think we must not be naive and say we can just do that by talking about it. I mean, I think we all realize it's going to take real money and collaboration. And so I really appreciated the conversation. Thank you very much. And thank you for tolerating my sarcasm mostly. Huh? And thank you for translating into English. Okay. That was a lot of politics, eh? Jeez, I tell you. By tonight I may be kicked out of the UK, and I'm not sure I'll be.
Fiona has a question.
No, thank you. Sorry, there's one program director tomorrow. You're in charge. Can I please excuse you guys now?